Neutron Capture Harlowe is not only Harlowe's best build, but in my opinion, the best build in the entire game. The damage on this build is completely disgusting, allowing you to instantly kill pretty much anything you want with all sorts of different weapons. And keep in mind, you can do this without abusing any bugs and even without using the infamous crit knife. You'll of course do more damage if you use the knife, just like every other build in the game would, but all it'll really do is make your boss kills go from like 2 seconds to 1.5 seconds. Outside of the insane boss DPS, this build's mobbing is absolutely godlike as well, being able to instantly melt an entire screen of enemies thanks to the Katagawa's Revenge sniper rifle, filling the screen with lightning balls of death that annihilate everything, and giving you your Chroma Accelerator back in just seconds. Bread and butter of this build is the Chroma Accelerator Augment Neutron Capture, which transfers a portion of the damage dealt by Chroma Accelerator into bonus radiation damage onto your gun. This means that any bonuses that we get to, say, action skill damage, radiation damage, elemental damage, etc., will apply to both the initial damage dealt by our Chroma Accelerator, but also the damage that we get from Neutron Capture, effectively allowing us to double dip off of tons of damage. This bonus damage is going to be the same regardless of what weapon we are using, so the best way to take advantage of it is with a weapon that fires very fast or hits enemies a ton of times per second, because every single one of those hits will be applying that juicy Neutron Capture damage. Then we use one of 2 class mods to effectively get our action skill cooldown back in just seconds when using the Katagawa's sniper rifle. Since it can apply the shock status effect near instantly, it works perfectly for both the Field Scientist and Skeptic class mods. We'll talk more about the gear later as we get into the specifics, but remember that the entirety of the build is posted over on Mobalytics. You can easily reference everything in a written format, and I even have written down all of the drop locations for every single legendary that you may want for this build. Alright, let's start off with the skill tree. Real quick, I want to say that 80% of you guys, yeah, I'm talking to you, man. You probably aren't subscribed right now. You're probably a part of the problem, the 80%. If you like the content, just hit the sub button. Alright, fringe YouTuber stuff aside, let's get into the skill tree. There's a lot of different ways you can actually set this up, and honestly, it is based on preference. I'll have a couple different setups in the actual written guide, but let's get into it. For our first 5 points, we're going to go into Field Ready Prototype. There's a lot of controversy around this node because many people in their videos are saying that this does not actually double dip for Neutron Capture, effectively applying to both the Chroma Accelerator damage and then also the damage from Neutron Capture. I have tested this node extensively, and I can say that it does double dip, and I highly encourage anybody that disagrees with that to go test it themselves. I've done this a million times, so I am 100% confident that both Field Ready Prototype action skill damage and the action skill damage that rolls on your class mod does double dip for Neutron Capture. However, the action skill damage, from what I could tell from I Am a Gun, does not double dip. So that's interesting. I think it is dependent on which actual action skill damage you're getting. But regardless, for the purposes of the skill tree, we're going to go 5 into Field Ready Prototype because that's very good. And Cyclotron is decent for fire rate, but more often than not, we're just going to use the Katagawa, so we don't need the fire rate. Elementary is just LE damage, which does double dip. Same with radiation damage via Enrich there. And then I like 1 point to Elephant's Foot to just give us extra overshield, kind of like as an oh shit button. Anytime our shield goes down, we just boom, get a full overshield, which is pretty nice. Also does some damage. Then we go 5 into Poison Sun, get a lot of radiation damage. And then 3 into Chain Reaction, even more radiation damage. And also Fissile Launcher, which just helps us do a little bit more overall damage when we actually shoot out our Chroma Excel. And then we have Demon Core, which is going to drastically buff up our actual Chroma Excel. Finishing off the red tree, we go 5 into Practical Applications for just extra skill damage, of course. And then we get 3 points into Highly Efficient. I really like this for survivability. This is basically just our last 3 points. Anytime we get a kill, 24% of our shield. This basically makes us invincible. It feels really good, so I highly recommend that. I think it just rounds out the build perfectly. And then 5 points into Mechanical Brilliance is also just 50% more skill damage, which again, double dips. And then we're going to go into 5 Make Extraordinary. If you're using a crit knife, these points are useless on a boss. However, it is pretty good for mobbing, and the damage that you have for bossing is so ridiculously insane anyways, you don't really need to min-max it that much, to be honest with you. And then we go Periodic Table Flip, which is LE damage, which does double dip, but it also gives us status effect application chance, which is quite nice with our class mod. The other way to set it up is instead of getting some of the last few points in red and blue tree, you instead go into green and you grab Confirmative Reality. This is, depending on which class mod you're using, you'll have to do this setup. They're more or less the same. I just like this setup for a more versatile overall build that sports both high damage, survivability, and consistency, and you don't need to use the crit knife with this setup. Another thing you could do is, if you're not using the crit knife, I would probably take out 2 points of highly efficient and maybe 2 points of periodic table flip, and I would instead put it into glow up, just so you have a little bit more crit chance to help out your bossing, but you really don't need it, to be honest with you. Getting into the spec tree here, I don't even have mine because I was just testing some stuff, but basically you want to do these, and these. So you want riddle you this, gun damage. Gun damage is good. It doesn't actually apply to your neutron capture, but if you're using I am a gun, 25% of that gun damage turns into, or 50% of the gun damage, therefore 25%, the purposes of riddle you this, would be action skill damage, and then that action skill damage gets applied to the initial hit of your chrome accelerator, so it buffs you a little bit. And then a honed bind is just nice for the extra crit chance and crit damage on your action skill, which will of course convert into more damage. Contamination is actually quite nice. You'll get some stacks of increased status effect application chance here, which is helpful when you are mobbing. For bossing, doesn't really do anything. You could instead opt for the best defense, but that is a pretty heavy point investment there. And again, the bossing is so disgusting, you really don't need it. When it comes to the weapons here, our bread and butter for the build is the Katagawa's Revenge Sniper Rifle, particularly one with a Jacob's part. If you haven't seen this weapon before, I'll briefly demonstrate it. You shoot, spawns 3 little balls. However, if you have one with Jacob's and then you land a critical hit, it will spawn 6 balls. But as you can see, I actually have 9. And if I shoot multiple enemies, they will not only ricochet off of other enemies and critting them, it'll also just spawn an infinite amount of balls, which pairs perfectly with our neutron capture. You'll see I pop right here, and every single little guy I shoot is doing hundreds of thousands of DPS with neutron capture, which is the most disgusting thing ever. The reason that you want it to be Jacob's is because you can use the enhancement bounce pass, where guns with Jacob parts increase the number of possible ricochets. So this will mean that it'll go up to, by default with Jacob's, if you land a crit, it goes up to 6 balls. But then if you have bounce pass, it goes up to 9 total balls. And the more balls you have, I mean, the better of a time you're going to have. You know what I'm saying? Talk about my enhancement more in a second, but this is really what enables the build to be so insane. Ideally, you also want, in addition to Jacob's, a COV licensed mag, but you don't have to have that. I think it just makes it feel a bit better because you have more bullets in the mag to actually shoot. I think with COV, I can shoot like, 12, 13 times on average, but otherwise you can only shoot like 5 times. So having that is quite nice, but it is hard to get. Other weapons, you can almost use anything with this build. Anything fast firing like a double barrel purple SMG will beam enemies, therefore doing that damage pretty often. A lot of people like the convergence. It's pretty good, especially for bossing. For mobbing, I don't really like it, but for bossing it's pretty good because it is actually hitting a ton of times. You can see every one of those slashes is hitting multiple times. Was pretty good. And also the Rogue Looty Mad Lad, if you have one with the shotgun underbarrel, you can see by default it shoots 22 rounds a second, which is insane. If you get the shotgun underbarrel, it shoots 22 rounds a second plus 4 or 5 projectiles. I haven't actually counted this, probably 5 projectiles. So then it's shooting 100 projectiles a second, making it probably the best overall bossing weapon for this build. Bosses actually die in a second, which is pretty funny, but you don't need to optimize the boss damage. If you're going to farm for one item, just get Katagawa's. This is an all-rounder, works for literally everything. Repkit, I like to use a war paint just for the movement speed, and I have one with elemental affinity, so it helps out my bossing a little bit. You can also get a triple bypass that has elemental affinity as well, just so you always have that buff up, but I should have my buff up the majority of the time anyway, and the elemental damage, take it or leave it. I like the movement speed, feels pretty good. When it comes to your ordnance, I'm not going to lie to you, you're going to do more damage if you have the penetrator augment throwing knife. It's just insane. Guaranteed crits is just always going to be better for as long as this exists. But I got most of the gameplay using this simply just as to the people saying that my build only relies on the throwing knife. So use whatever you want. Throwing knife is certainly better. Class mod. This is a bit of a tangent here, but there are 2 options. You have the Scientist, where whenever you shock an enemy, you automatically entangle them. And this is good because it allows you to take advantage of confirmative reality, so that every single time you hit an enemy, you get your action skill cooldown back. If you're playing in a group, I highly recommend doing this setup, where you have confirmative, because you're giving that action skill cooldown to all your friends, and that feels crazy good for them, and it'll work perfectly fine for you. It also helps out your mobbing a little bit, but my preferred way to play is with the Skeptic. Whenever you the top line doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is when there's a status effect on an enemy, every time you hit them, you restore 5% of your action skill cooldown. So that's really good. You can effectively do the same thing with the scientist here, but I like being able to have more skill points to kind of opt into blue and red tree a little bit more and opt out of this tree. Also, these nodes that you get just aren't as powerful as the other ones, but you get a little bit more boss damage this way as well, but this is another great option. When it comes to the roles on the Skeptic, there's only two things you really care about. Passives that are good would be Bright Future, just to give you some more fire rate, or you could get Indiscreet Math for splash damage. Splash damage does not double dip, but it is still a damage increase, and rate of fire doesn't help you that much on Katagawas, although it feels a little bit nice. One thing you can get on the Skeptic is action skill damage, which is pretty good. And then on the Scientist, you can get action skill damage in addition to splash damage. So that is quite a lot of damage there. And if you're using the Scientist, the only role you care about is trying to get more points into periodic table flip. When it comes to the shield, I like using the Watts for Dinner because it gives you a 25% multiplicative bonus of shock damage whenever you have an overshield, and you'll obviously have an overshield quite a lot if you have a roll with Siphon. If you don't have Siphon, this isn't that good, and my other preferred thing to use is the Super Soldier with Vagabond on it because it gives movement speed. I'm pretty much always at full energy shield, and it feels nice for the movement speed, just run around really fast, and the fire rate feels pretty good too. Honestly though, use whatever shield you want. Those are just the options that I mentioned. When it comes to enhancement, if we're going to be using the Katagawas, which you just should be using full stop all the time in my opinion, the most important thing that you can get is Bounce Pass, so that you have increased number of potential ricochets by 1. This helps out your bossing a lot. And then in addition to that, guns with Jacob's parts gain a 40% chance to ricochet non-crits. This means that you don't actually have to land a critical hit on an enemy to get the 9 projectiles there. You saw I body shotting this guy, and I'm getting all those extra projectiles. The bottom stats on your enhancement aren't super important. Getting legendary enhancements is really hard, but if you're able to get this combination, then you're golden. The bottom effects, I actually didn't realize are basically perfect for me because status effect chance is quite good, just so you take more advantage of Skeptic and it's more consistent, but it's not really going to make a huge difference. The only other stuff you could get on the, I don't think there's anything you could get on the bottom here that would be good. Maybe like normal gun damage, so it converts into a little bit of action skill damage. That's basically it. If for some reason you really don't want to use Katagawas or you can't get one with Jacobs, just use anything that is going to give you fire rate, so it'll buff your, maybe your Looty Mad Lad, your Convergence, whatever, anything like that. I recommend there's like a COV one that gives you some fire rate, there's a Daedalus one that gives you fire rate, or just look for one that just has like good stats on the bottom rolls there. If you're using a Vladoff gun, you can get, like Bullet Hose. This one's pretty good actually for that. The enhancement isn't a huge deal unless you're using Katagawas, to be honest with you. I actually, with all of the gameplay, I use this enhancement still while using other weapons. For firmware, if you're using Katagawas, you want to use 3-piece high caliber. If you're not using Katagawas, you want 3-piece Deadeye. The other 2-piece you want is Gujfka, because it gives you a little bit of action skill damage. This action skill damage, I can't tell if it's double dipping or not. I did not test with it enough. I know that it's either giving you more than 15% action skill damage, or it is double dipping at a lower value than 15%. Didn't test it, no idea. Who cares? It increases your damage a little bit. Nothing else is really going to. For 2 pieces, if you want, you can go like fire rate related things, but that's what I went for. When it comes to actually playing with the build, this is also probably the easiest build in the entire game to use. You don't really have to do much. You just shoot one dude with your Chrome XL, it'll blow up. You can even just aim at the floor. And the Chrome XL itself doesn't actually do very much damage. But once you do that, you can just spawn a whole bunch of bubbles everywhere, and they will basically instantly kill everything. And because they're applying statuses instantly, you also get your cooldown back, so you can spam it back to back. You can see, I shoot one ball in like a general area and the mobs will die. And these guys will spawn in and give me my cooldown back basically immediately there. So that's cool. Boom, boom. Pull these dudes up. Ideally, you do actually want to like direct hit enemies with your Katagawa, because then it'll actually ricochet. If you don't direct hit them, they won't ricochet. You can see the battle wagon is pretty cool there because there's so many mobs up there, so you get the neutron capture damage. And yeah, everything just insta-dies. I'll do a quick little vault too, just to show the a boss kill, I suppose. Because why not? But for the purposes of the vaults, you just are like killing mobs, right? It's pretty simple. Blow a dude up and they just instantly die. Like, literally nothing in the game can compete with this in terms of how fast you kill stuff, because you don't have to, like, you can kill multiple enemies at a time, right? That's why Katagawa's is so good. You don't have to aim at stuff. You can pre-place the balls and whatnot, and it works perfectly for getting your action skill cooldown back. I just completely whiffed that neutron capture, or sorry, chrome excel. None of you guys saw that, but it's okay. Have it back. Boom, blow that guy up, and we'll blow up the rest of the guys. People use a lot of different weapons for this build, but honestly, like, you really don't need to. It's kind of a waste of time, especially for mobbing, because nothing is going to compare with the Katagawas. So I'd recommend just getting it. If there's something you want to use that's like fun for you to use, obviously by all means, it is a game, so try to have fun. But straight up, like, and I've seen a lot of people making videos being like, oh, this is the best gun for this, and way better, blah blah blah, and it's like, you can realistically, for boss killing, you can kind of use whatever, but for mobbing, it just doesn't get better than this. Katagawa's is so good that I want to go out of my way to make builds with Katagawas on other characters, because the mobbing is just superior to basically everything else that exists in the game. Run over to the boss, and I'll do a little boss build demonstration, kind of just going over how I generally do things. Alright, we're at the boss dude here. We'll reset, buy some ammo. So you guys are not like swapping any gear or doing any cringe stuff. So basically what I will do, and I do this on pretty much every boss, is while the boss is spawning, up a little Repkit, and I'll try to get far away from the boss so that I can shoot my Chroma Excel, so that it goes where the boss is. Kind of went out of range this time, but I think it'll still hit him. Boom, still hits him, and while he's spawning in, I want to pre-place a whole bunch of Katagawa balls hitting him. And then if I had a throwing knife, while the Chroma Excel is actually traveling, I'll throw the throwing knife, so then when I detonate it, it is guaranteed crits, and then I already have all these balls pre-placed, so then the second that he is damageable and my Chroma Excel actually goes off, he instantly dies to all of the stuff. Here's my character, so you know I didn't change anything or whatever. I've done this with like 20 skill points put in. You don't need to be fully min-maxed, but I figured I would just make kind of like a perfected version of the build for those of you guys that wanted to see it, because I've been testing a lot of stuff, and I kind of just wanted to finalize it and, you know, I don't know, dot the I or whatever, right? Whatever the terminology is there. Yeah. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, make sure to subscribe, drop a like, all that good stuff, and build link in the description. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.